I'm Caroline Hyde, anchor for Bloomberg Television. In my coverage for Bloomberg News, I speak regularly with some of the most powerful corporate executives about their issues, their concerns, their strategies, and their solutions. I'm really excited to be hosting this briefing on intelligent automation, creating the workforce of the future. Now, the technology advances of the past couple of years has permanently changed the way we think about our workforces, from mass relocations to mass resignations to massive changes in work processes. The future of work looks very different from 2 years ago, and it continues to change rapidly. To meet the demands of these changes from both employees and clients, businesses are turning to technology solutions, and in particular to automation bolstered by AI. The pervasiveness of the labor shortage has increased the already rapid pace of digital transformation. Every aspect of business, customer service, manufacturing, operations, and research, well, it's looked to automation to make up for the losses and the skill gaps in the workforce. Businesses, they're applying the latest innovations in intelligent automation to drive efficiency throughout the enterprise. And companies from financial services to manufacturing to telecoms, well, they've integrated intelligent automation into the workflow to help with planning, to predict customer needs, and to alert workers to potential performance issues, for just a few examples. Now, the business and IT executives gathered for this briefing will share how their businesses are leveraging technology to overcome those labor shortages, to create operational efficiencies, and to enhance customer satisfaction. Before we get started, there's a couple of announcements. First, I'd like to acknowledge our sponsor, IBM. Now, if you experience any issues with audio or video quality, try to refresh your browser or use the event support chat box in the bottom right corner of your screen for assistance. For today's event, we have partnered with Thiston. It's an audio-to-text platform that is transcribing today's discussion in real time, making the event more accessible. You can access Thiston for the real-time transcription via the link in the session description. Please engage with us on social media using #IntelligentAutomation and engage with our attendees in the event chat in the bottom right corner of your screen. Now, let's get started with our first session. Please join me in welcoming Woo-Jin Ho, Senior Hardware Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, who will lead a discussion on transforming the enterprise for optimal efficiency with terrific panelists from Home Depot, Deutsche Bank, and Morgan Stanley.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Woo-Jin Ho, and I'm the Senior Hardware and Networking Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. The panel discussion is on how organizations were able to leverage the latest advancements in automation and AI to create workflows between job functions and to break down operational silos in order to optimize efficiency. We have a great panel lineup today. Joining me today to discuss their automation journey are Paul Anthony, Senior Vice President of Technology with the Home Depot, Shivaji Dasgupta, Managing Director, Head of Customer Lifecycle Data and ESG Technology at Deutsche Bank, and Sean Riley, Managing Director, Head of Process Optimizations at Morgan Stanley. So let's kick off our discussion, and I want to start things off with you, Sean. Can you discuss your automation journey? When did you decide to move down this path, and what was the rationale at the time to move down that path?
Yeah, certainly, and thanks for everyone for joining. So it's hard to pinpoint. I think it's hard for us to say we could pinpoint a time when we decided to move down that path. I think of this more as a continuous journey overall in what we've been doing. And so when I sit here and think through, okay, how do we get to where we are today? And how does automation feed into that? I really think about it across sort of three key characteristics or key three areas. The first one is really about a overall culture of continuous improvement. So how do we drive continuous improvement across the firm? Your point on the rationale, well, the impetus for this is to say, how do we optimize our processes and everything we do? And this doesn't start with automation. In fact, we've been doing this for years, and our operations team is incredible at finding new front-to-back efficiencies, but how do we drive that? So that's the one step. The second is about innovation. And when I say innovation here, it's really about how do we keep our ear to the road? How do we hear what's happening? And that's both internally, how do we pick up things that we're doing internally and learn from that and replicate in other places, but also externally. What's happening in the marketplace? What's happening with startups, with venture capitalists? What can we learn from them and borrow practices to bring internally? Now, the third area, when I think of our journey, is around engagement. So when I say engagement, the first two areas are nice, but that's a lot of, thinking without action. Engagement really is where the rubber meets the road. So how do we set up a group that both on the bottom layer, how do we engage the process, the people that own the process, people who actually do the work? Engaging them is important because none of this gets done unless we have their hearts, minds, and their work moving differently, but also the senior management, and doing it in a way that we can drive measurable benefits, but also get the air cover, because we're trying to challenge some norms here. And when we challenge some norms, sometimes we need some air cover to change the way we work. So I think of the journey, I think across those different dimensions and how we get there. Now, specific a little bit on the intelligent automation piece, not just coming out of COVID, but really overall, we've done things like, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've done things like setting up a group focused on automation, a group on ML, a group focused on process mining discovery, and how we bring those pieces together. So we have the foundational pieces, we have some of these new capabilities, and bringing those together is really pushing us on that automation journey.
Oh, great. Shivaji, how was the journey at Deutsche Bank?
Thanks for having me, and thank you so much for joining. I think on automation at Deutsche Bank, very similar to what Sean's been saying, we have been working on the automation and the robotics topics for a long time right now. So it's difficult for us to pinpoint and say, when we started it. It's been for a while, and what Sean was saying, it resonated quite a bit for us because very similar topics that we've been working at. Just to give you a little bit of the insight on the topics that we had started this on, and the way we are looking at it, or we were looking at it, was to start with continuous improvement for our processes. That's when we started looking at automation. How can we improve the existing processes, especially for reducing complexity and especially for reducing manual interactions in the operations of the day-to-day processes. That's where the initial focus was. And the other thing that we also wanted to do with automation was to bring more consistency across the entire group. So we are at Deutsche Bank quite geographically separated with our processes, and also also the divisions are quite individual. And if we were to bring in process learnings and process efficiencies from different areas, that was the other place where we use robotics or automation quite a lot. A couple of examples where we have been using this is around robotics process changes that we have been trying to implement for retail bank, for example, where address change from our customers could be implemented using robots. Those are the kind of initial examples where we have been implementing it. And over the last few years, this has even moved towards low code, no code, or low code robotics, automation across divisions, leading up also to data-driven improvements like AI, ML, or robotic process automation. So that's the journey at Deutsche Bank.
Oh, that's great. And Paul, can you discuss how Home Depot moved down its automation path?
Sure. First of all, good morning, and thank you for having me, letting me join you guys. We always look at all our journeys from a customer drive. How does the customer see us? What do we do to enable that customer to come into our stores? That's kind of our linchpin that we go after. But many of these technologies, specifically on the automation side, actually started on the infrastructure side. So we actually ended up redoing our backends. This was way before pandemic. Redoing our backends, what we call common services, started breaking things apart to allow us to have a more modular approaches. Also building it on a modern technology stack. Home Depot has been around for 40 years, and we've built technology on top of technology, and now we're actually undoing a lot of that to be able to build it on a modern stack. And then finally, that has enabled us to go to speed and get us a lot of flexibility. Essentially, that's allowed us to understand the customer better because the data has been now isolated, and that has been a big part of it. So from a journey perspective, I would say we started way back, even way before the pandemic, but it's actually come to fruition and helped us quite a bit through the pandemic.
Great. And then, just to move on, you gentlemen, you provided a framework on the automation journey. But Paul, what were some of the early use cases for your automation at Home Depot, and what were some of the early challenges that you saw?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, all our tech investments are tied back to customer initiatives, and that's been a key part of it. And one of the examples I tell you is we opened a new distribution center called the Flatbed Distribution Center. So essentially, imagine trucks rolling into the distribution center instead of on the side of the DC, and we actually load those trucks up, and that essentially allowed us to deliver products directly to the customer where they wanted it, when they wanted it. It's been open since 2020, and what we've done is essentially allowed us to test things out specifically in one market. Since then, we've actually expanded and deployed to multiple markets. And imagine the number of customers, the orders have dramatically increased, as well as we've started to scale this out. As we continue to open these FDCs, we call them, across the country, we're able to relieve a lot of the pressures our stores are seeing. So imagine the automation that we wrote for the stores, all of that goes away. Now it's actually fundamentally tied back to our distribution centers. That's been a huge win for our technology to be leveraged.
Oh, perfect. And Shivaji, can you talk to some of the early use cases at Deutsche Bank?
Sure. I think some of the early use cases I was saying was mostly around the operations and the removing the inefficiencies in the systems. And one of the use cases were mostly around, let's say, removing the repeated tasks with structured data. So one example, which is really great for customers, for example, in the retail bank, was when a typical application for loans or any address change would come, how can we automatically input that into the systems by just reading these information or ordering a credit card, those kind of automation of these very standard processes. Similar applications in internal control functions have also been implemented where within compliance, robot supports the internal teams in reviewing pre-clearance requests for employee trades that they need to be done, which are very standard applications filled out by the employees, and they are just pre-cleared. Those are the kind of use cases which we implemented initially, and some of the challenges which we saw there was not so much about the tools, but the initial part was around the mindset change and the adoption that we had within the teams around these tools. How were they getting used to it, or how would they adopt it? Fear of job losses because of these kind of efficiency tools, which were actually mitigated when they saw that it's not so much about taking away what they are doing, but actually augmenting what they are doing, and rather actually helping them focus on other parts of the process rather than doing very repetitive tasks. One of the newer use cases, newer in the sense in the last 5 to 10 years, which we have implemented, is around reading of documents in Santana in California, where together with an RPA engine, we are reading the documents for our applications. It's called WorkFusion, and that's what we are using with AI technology to review documents. And the other thing that's very COVID specific, actually, we launched was a very timely robotics chatbot to answer some of the very repetitive questions which were coming from especially corporate clients related to governmental support in Germany on COVID. So those are the kind of examples and some of the initial challenges we saw.
Great. And then, Sean, are there any examples that you are able to share in terms of the use cases and the challenges as well?
Yeah, I think if you look at some of the early use cases, as you said, very similar to what we're talking about here. I mean, I'd emphasize we've been doing some things, and we start with some things that are around semi-structured content as well. I mean, I know we're talking about structured content, but even semi-structured content as we look at it. So things like reading AP invoices and processing those invoices. Even when we get on the trade, the completion of trade often requires documents, and those documents need to be read, understood, interpreted, and brought forward. And so we're using RPA and some of those techniques to read that. Now, initially, it's very much a human bot interaction, right? Having the person in the flow in the mix, making sure we're doing the right consumption. But over time, to your point on the challenges, is training, is learning, is ensuring that we can move that from that review model over to a more completely automated model as we go forward. So similar type use cases we're hearing in other areas, but really focused on how do we evolve that model, how do we train that model, and how do we drive those levels of the manual processing down over time.
Got it. And then, Shivaji, you actually discussed this in terms of the impacts to your overall operations and workforces. Some of the fear of adopting new workflows and concerns. Can you let's delve into that a little bit more? What changes to the workforce did some of these AI tools create? And, to follow on to that, did it open up new opportunities as some of these low-level processes were eliminated out of the entire workflow?
Mm-hmm. So basically, I'll answer that in three parts. Maybe the first part is how was the impact on the workforce, let's say? And that was the way we learned how can we create new skills and what are the new skills that we need and how do we tackle that? So two concrete examples around that we created around 4 or 5 years ago, based on our experience in the early days of automation, a robotics center of excellence, where we have centralized these expertise and brought in completely new skills to tackle all these challenges centrally, but also define solutions, also find solutions from the market which fit our needs much better. Also centrally, what we have created is an innovation team that handles not only these kind of low-code, no-code kind of programming, but also looks at how can we progress AI, ML for structured, unstructured data, and also new use cases within the bank, but also new types of, let's say, business models. That's a concrete impact that we have had on the workforce, creating these new skills. And what has helped us in that path, especially in the last 2 years, has been the strong partnership with Google that we have entered into with Google Cloud, and just creating these new skills and repurposing some of the skills and some of the knowledge that we have. The second impact is around the processes that you asked. So there has been completely, as I was saying, due to the AI-based tools, whether it's Work Fusion, whether in Ops, we have redefined some of these processes and gone ahead and defined front to back complete new processes. And that has also been reflected in the governance structures that we are now putting in place with new governance for process redesign. And the third impact around the customers, that is something that we are bringing step by step. It's difficult to give a real number behind what's the impact, of all these, because all these process improvements, they are in so many different parts of the bank and also with so many different tools. So we are reviewing them process by process in each of the businesses, but it's difficult to just assign one number to it. So that's kind of the way we are looking at it. What's the impact to the workforce? What's the impact to the processes? But also what's the impact in general to the bottom line?
Got it. And then, Paul, I mean, Home Depot must be a similar, but at the same time different case, especially given that your consumer-oriented, plus you have a tremendous extensive supply chain. Can you just talk about some of the workflow and the workforce productivity gains and challenges that you may have faced throughout the implementation process?
Yeah, let me see if I can share two examples. One on a little bit more on the infrastructure side. We actually leverage HashiCorp, Terraform, and Sentinel to start to automate compliance and security. We would spend weeks, if not months, getting approval on a development component. But as we standardize this, that has fundamentally speeded up our ability to deploy changes, that the digital touch points that both our associates and our customers. So that's been a huge win for us. The other one, just to tag along on this, is our store associates going back to our 2,300 stores. The technology we deployed inside their handheld devices, their what we call the first phones, has been critical in solving customer lookups and customer questions. We've essentially that has allowed us to go faster and faster in deploying changes into that device to allow those associates to be even more productive. And then on top of that, feel like they're making a big difference with our customers.
Great. And then Sean, just to tie this segment up, just why don't we talk about some of Morgan Stanley's productivity gains, and also why don't we talk a little bit more about some of the processes that you've been able to eliminate, low-level processes that you've been able to eliminate, and then to bring forth a lot more productivity gains, and new roles that may have been created as a result of the workflows that you may have been able to implement.
Yeah, I think the new role point is a good one to hit on. I know that we talked a bit about some of the shifting people to higher value work, eliminating some of the lower value activities. But, when I think in terms of how do we drive real transformation, how are we going to make this stick, it has to be at an amount of scale. And so we're always constantly thinking about how do we scale this. We do have centers of excellence, I know we talked about, but that's always going to be, we'll always be limited by the people in those centers and the expertise we provide. So how do we drive that next level of scale so that we can create the capacity for growth like you're talking about? And so when I think through the roles, and I think what's unique now, especially as we see, I think someone mentioned the low, no code aspects of this, is that we can now create a whole set of arms and legs. It's almost like we're democratizing process improvement or democratizing automation, because now we're creating a whole set of people who can use tools that maybe were reserved for technologists before, that were really only, we relied on development work to get done. And now we're pushing that down, and the ability for people to make the improvements in their own space. So when I see the skill set, it's not, are we have whole new roles, or is there just different hats that people can wear? And what we're seeing is the more and more that we push it forward, the more you can have people wearing different hats, the more that they can pick up and do improvements in their space. And then someone mentioned the governance. Obviously, you need governance around that to make sure that you keep things in control. But I think that's the other element that we're seeing in terms of shifts of workforce, talent, skills, and hats people wear, and driving the improvement on a more macro level, at a more scaled level versus having it in one area.
Okay, perfect. Moving on, Paul, we've all discussed all the technologies that you've implemented, and we've discussed the levels of success. But how do you measure that level of success? What are some of the KPIs that you look to, and also what are the typical pain points within the AI ML engine that you may have created that fall short of the KPIs, and how do you remedy that?
Yeah, we have approached this literally measuring what our customers are telling us. It could be the associates in the front line as well as the customers themselves. And we use a feedback loop in that. And on top of that, we have an agile development process to where we're taking that feedback and reacting to it. So let me give you a perfect example of this that just during COVID was just front and center for us. If you remember at the very beginning, we had a lot of stores that started shutting down. In Canada, for example, we had a whole region that just literally you couldn't open the stores. So we had to turn curbside on. Now, here's the funny part. We've been working on curbside for a while. Just never got it to the point where it needed to be usable. As soon as COVID hit, that became our only vehicle. But you know what? We had now worked out all the operational and/or technology changes that needed to be there. We turned it on, put at the same time this idea of getting feedback directly from the customer as well as the associate into the app itself. And that fundamentally allowed us to react. And we within 2 weeks had it up and running, and it was literally operational. And I would say to some extent carried some of the regions that could not open stores at all. And all our orders went through that curbside. So you've got this idea of getting feedback instantly and then reacting. To be honest, that's been, especially in an agile development team, critical for this success of our teams.
Great. And then Sean, how does Morgan Stanley measure the success of the workflow optimization tools that you implement?
Yeah, it's funny. It's interesting that Paul mentions the agile part because we have a similar thing in terms of how we've done iterative deployments or iterative development and how we can measure more consistently. But I think of it and build on that in terms of think about it as sort of two tiers or two layers, right? So first is the more bespoke layer. When you're working with an individual area, the individual opportunity, they have to set the outcome goal. So what are they trying to achieve? So in some cases, let's say we're trying to process a greater transaction volume. Okay, great. So the KPIs behind that are things like an STP rate increase and measuring that over time. So for each individual area as we're working through, we'll define what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve and then aligning the set of KPIs against that. So that's at that lower level. But those become very bespoke. At the macro level, how do we know we're seeing the impact? Because you can't just add up all those numbers because every group has a slightly different way of measuring and have different transactions. And so on the macro level, we're really focusing on sort of 4 key levers that we want to drive forward. So first is around the support for growth, whether that's revenue, whether it's transaction volume, what can we do to make sure that we're measuring and supporting our growth? The second is around effectiveness or productivity. Are we doing it more? Are we doing it better? Are we doing it faster? And how can we drive that measurement? The third, as Paul alluded to, customer satisfaction, employee engagement. How are people feeling? Are these changes actually elevating or changing the perspective of the way people feel? And then finally, around risk. We still run a fairly risk-based business. As we automate more, we eliminate manual processing, we can change and improve some of our risk position. So on the lower level, very bespoke, very technical, like you mentioned, different KPIs we can drive. But ultimately, how do we roll those up into some broader categories and keep our eye on driving measurements across that part?
Right. And Shivaji, similarly, how do you measure your success and remedy any type of shortfalls that you may face?
Yeah. So I think similar to what was said, right? I'll start with the success criteria, what we are using. So we have them primarily in three main categories. One is, what are the cost savings? Like most of these automation, most of these efficiencies, how are they being related to the cost savings that we have? And are we tackling higher volumes? In many of these cases, it's about the throughput of some of these documents. Are we tackling higher volumes? Is this efficiency being measured? The other part is around the error rates going down. If there are any of the manual processes being replaced by these automated processes. And the third part is definitely, how is it affecting the customer? It's not only about the customer satisfaction, but what is it that we can bring the customer new compared to the existing processes, and how is that being adopted by the customers? So those are the kind of categories in which we measure and the KPIs. And based on the hits and misses, most of the remediation, and this was also talked about, is along the agile ways so that we can see if the hits and misses are more specific to the divisions, how do we solve them around the divisional or the business solutions, or compared to the foundational technology, what needs to be rectified there. And that also measuring how quickly are we turning around. If we do recognize some of the hits and misses, how quickly can we turn that around? So that, in a nutshell, is the process and the governance around the success and challenges.
Great. So I have a closing question to all of our panelists. I want to I want you guys to bring out your crystal ball. What is your outlook for automation and operational streamlining over the next 5 years? And to do what you want to do, I mean, do you have the tools to implement that, this vision? And Sean, why don't you start this discussion?
Yeah, I mean, we started on the journey, right? The journey that we're on, and where do we stand? We've pulled together, as said, and we've mentioned centers of expertise, but we've pulled together that expertise as capabilities under this process optimization umbrella to help drive that forward. That includes the skills, the tooling, the governance, and I think we're pretty well positioned in order to drive that forward. When I think crystal ball, or what excites me or energizes me, and in terms of what's different, I look a little bit at my past. I've done optimization work at many different places at some very, very large companies. And one of the things that I've noticed in the past is that, like in some cases, we wouldn't even start something. We wouldn't even sniff an opportunity if it wasn't worth like $50 million. Like we wouldn't even, because there was a lot of upfront costs. You have to form the team. You have to get all the support. You had to do a big waterfall analysis, design, capture everyone's process, bring the SMEs out, and you see sort of this thing where we're trying to do everything big, and we wouldn't touch anything if it wasn't big enough. And the thing that I see that's a lot different is that we can now break that down differently, right? So yes, the technology is important, but the technology is important because it allows us to change that equation a bit from what we used to focus on, and it allows us to bring the tooling to the experts rather than bringing a process expert to our SMEs and asking them to tell them everything they know, which inevitably we miss stuff. So the more that we can bring that down, the more that we can, start small, drive and do incremental improvements, and then we can copy paste. We can actually pick those things up and replicate them in other areas. And I think that's sort of the key positioning moving forward versus, any technology change. Of course, the technology is important. We have tons of it, but how do we use that technology in a meaningful way and get it in the right hands?
Got it. Shivaji, your thoughts?
Yeah, I pretty much think along the same ways, but if I were to pick two topics, maybe, because the entire journey of this automation and robotics, AI, ML, was a pretty much inward-looking journey. We started doing that for improving our internal processes and thinking from internal improvements. And I think moving forward, looking ahead, there are two areas which excite me personally. One is, how can we create value for our customers from this? How can we actually start thinking from the customer side and actually create processes which are oriented towards customers rather than have improved processes for the bank? And the other part is, how can this help for sustainability, for ESG? And those are the two main areas where I think I would be quite excited on.
And Paul, what is your outlook?
One thing is clear in this journey is the technology is constantly changing. There's no way to kind of say this is or that is going to be the answer. So that's clear. So we are constantly evaluating and investing in new technology. And I would tell you, with the focus on improving the experience for our associates and our store customers, that is fundamentally what drives us. Everybody gets up excited in the morning trying to figure out, how do I use the latest tech to go make that happen? So, I don't know what it's going to look like in 5 years, but I know it's going to be very different than it is today. That is a fact.
Indeed. Thank you, Sean, Shivaji, and Paul, with your thoughts on workflow automation. This was a fantastic discussion, and we'll wrap here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dinesh Nirmal. I'm the General Manager for IBM Automation. Thank you for joining us today as we talk about intelligent automation and reinventing workforce. We just spoke about how intelligent automation can be applied across the industry to achieve greater operating efficiencies. Now, I would like to do a deep dive on one workflow, which is all about HR and recruiting. So for today, we have Angela Hood, who's the CEO of This Way Global, is joining me today to talk about how intelligent automation can accelerate recruitment of a diverse workforce and how to use AI to actually eliminate bias in that process. This Way Global has over 10 years of experience in the industry, and have more than 5,500 clients worldwide. So I'm really excited to have Angela today. Angela, welcome. So when I've been talking to you a few times now, Angela. What I hear is like not just you're the founder and CEO of this company, but there's an underlying passion that you have on the whole HR process, the bias detection, and the work that you're doing. Tell our audience a little more about the company you founded and what the cost that you're driving.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, first of all. I am excited to be here and share our experience with IBM. As my own professional experience, I was leaving college as an engineer and entering the workforce. I'm very excited about submitting my resume. Obviously, Angela was up at the top, just like everyone else's resume. You always have your name prominently displayed. And I was having crickets or silence on the other side as I would submit my resume for jobs. And my cohorts, which were men, were all having great success. And I couldn't understand it. And so I have a great mentor, and he suggested, why don't I use my initials, which are conveniently AL? And so I started submitting my resume with AL, my last name. And so everyone assumed that I was a man. And all of a sudden, phone was ringing. And that was the first moment I realized the world is not as I expected it to be. And I'm not going to be embraced with open arms and equal view. But I stayed in the industry for many, many years. I loved my experience there, and I kind of powered through. I'm also a military spouse of more than 30 years. And when I watched my Marine Corps husband, who is also a fighter pilot, retire, he had all kinds of bias that was applied to him. I have a son who's a Navy diver. I have a daughter who's gay. And so very personally, I have an experience with bias in the workplace. But what was more telling is when I went to Cambridge, I spent 4 years there with a team of 150 people doing research to unfold what the real challenges are in recruiting. And so much of it is around bias. And that leads to a lack of diversity, which leads to more bias.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, just reading about the work you are doing, your background, your experience, I mean, it actually inspires me. And that's the reason I invited you to come with me on the show and talk about it, because the more audience, more folks know about it, the better. So there's a widespread recognition on the value of diverse workforce. Can you tell us a little more about how intelligent automation can help bring in diverse workforce?
Absolutely. So much of the obstacles to bringing in people that are different or diverse is that they have a different background. They have a different experience, both in work and scholastic achievements and collegiate achievements. And when you can leverage automation, it levels the playing field for them. They can come in as maybe they don't have as much experience, but they can upskill very quickly, catch up to their peers, and start accelerating inside the organization. And it breaks through this barrier that we think that we're different, because we're actually not very different. We're actually much more the same to one another. But we have to remove the experiences that cause us to look different. And when I say look different, I mean on paper. In the resume and in the application, that's where we see the differences kind of rear their ugly head. But when you actually get the people working together, you find that there's not these great differences. And this automation that we are working on together is what changes the game.
And also, Angela, there is a movement going on the digitization of labor force, obviously freeing up the time for high-value tasks. And you have been also exploring embedding IBM Watson Orchestrate in your solution to make the AI come to life, giving your users a tool to help rank candidates. Can you talk about the value of that capability that will bring your solution?
Absolutely. I would say that one of the most powerful things is when you can give some part of your workforce, an employee, a new hire, technology that I think of as a sort of like a concierge, like a 5-star employee experience. And when you can take technology and put that in the hands of a new workforce and say these things are going to be done for you. It's not a chat bot. It's actually you're building an assistant that goes and does the work for you that you really don't want to do. And we all have that part of our job. And you get to focus on the things that you're passionate about, that you're really good at, that where your superhero strength lives. I think that's when you see the true person come out as a great employee. You see your team accelerate, and you see your company have extraordinary benefits that you don't have if you don't have this automation there to help.
So Angela kind of talked about the digitization and the work someone doesn't want to do, but basically being able to take that free time and go focus on high-value tasks. So let me just dissect the Watson Orchestrate for the audience for 30 seconds so you all see what we are trying to do using AI. So the digitization of labor force is happening. And if you look at the labor, right, any individual, there's three things. One, credentials, two, skills, and three, persona. So we are focused on the skills, and the skills could be API calls, skills could be bots, skills could be workflow, but the AI behind it is all about sequencing those skills, meaning bringing it all together, whether it's an API call, whether it's a chat bot, whether it's a specific bot or any of those things. How do you bring it all together and sequence it? That's where the AI is, and that's where Watson Orchestrate is focused. Last question, Angela, before we close it out. So how do you see intelligent automation impacting employee effectiveness and HR budgets as you look into the future?
So two really, I think, important aspects of this is every company right now is trying to find a way to be more efficient, be more effective, and be more candidate-centric. Those things are all very hard to do individually. And at the same time, they're looking for ways to have some cost savings. So I want to give you one experience that we have right now, which is a 3-person team. And when applied with Watson Orchestrate and what our technology does, this 3-person team actually has a savings of roughly $84,000 a year. So that is freeing up capital to hire another person, to increase profitability, all kinds of things. So that's like where the money is. But I think more importantly, if you can have a team that comes on board and is very effective and loves their job because you've given them work-life balance, that's where you have really won.
That's really good. So Angela, I want to thank you. Thank you for discussing how the HR recruiting operations, a workflow that's important to all of our businesses, can be improved with AI and automation. The efficiency gains are significant and the time savings is real. Above all, I also want to thank you on the noble cause that you're driving, especially around the diverse workforce that you're putting together. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you so much for your partnership. And I do want to invite anyone that's listening to this, if you would like to reach out, we have contact@thiswayglobal.com. And our team actually has a special gift and also live demos to show you how automation can really change your life.
I'm Scarlett Fu, an anchor for Bloomberg Quick Take. I'm excited to welcome Sampath Salmianarayan. He is Chief Revenue Officer for Verizon Business. We are focused this morning on automation and reinventing the workforce, specifically the ways in which Verizon is using artificial intelligence, AI, to solve problems. Sampath, thank you so much for joining us this morning to discuss the reinvention of the workforce.
Thank you for having me. This is a great time. A lot of things are converging, and we are so happy to be where we are right now.
All right, well, let's get to it. I want to start a little bit on you because you are a former consultant. You worked at KPMG and Boston Consulting, and you moved to Verizon about 8 years ago, where you have headed up product, finance, strategy, and now enterprise. Can you give me a sense of how you thought about and folded in automation in your different capacities prior to the pandemic?
Historically, for us, automation had always been about an efficiency lever. Which is how do you take cost out of the process? How do you take time out of a process? How do you reduce the number of steps in a process? It had a very engineering, efficiency, productivity bent to it. I think in the last 24, 36 months, we've had a fundamental change in how we think about automation and use of AI, going from cost efficiency to completely focused on customer experience, to a point now where every one of our projects has a customer experience lead to it. How do we make it easier for the customer to get on our service? How do you keep the service, to interact with our service? So a very different bent on how we started a couple of years ago.
Can you give me the best example of that, the best customer-facing instance in which you are now using that automation and that AI?
Yeah, look, let's take our call centers. Look, we run some of the largest call centers in the world, both internally at Verizon and some of our customers, some really, really large contact centers. And historically, a lot of our automation has been, how do we take minutes off a call? How do we take the number of calls down? It's been very centered around that. Look, we've done that. The last couple of years, we've probably taken down 30, 40% of all our calls that came into our centers. But what is now the focus is on customer experience, or NPS, or Net Promoter Score. So, for example, we want the easy stuff that someone calls in, what's my balance, how much I need to pay, what services do I have, can I cancel my service, can I add a service? That's the easy stuff. So we've automated all of that. And the good thing with automation is the customers are happy because it takes 2 seconds to do something that would take 15 minutes earlier. But the second piece is more important, Scarlett, where the time we saved on that, we've invested back in the business. So our call center agents now spend time on the more difficult questions, things that were, edge cases that were a little more complex, and they take their time, they explain it to customers, they work through it. And what we're seeing is a pretty big expansion in our Net Promoter Score by focusing on some of the more difficult problems. So very customer centric. Yeah, do we take some cost out in the process? Yes, but that's not our primary goal.
So you're saying the customer is happier because they can get their problems, their easy problems, solved more quickly and more directly. What about your employees? Because they're being asked to move on to tackling bigger, more entangling problems. Do they have the skill set for that? I mean, if they haven't been moving up through the ranks slowly and addressing those easy problems first, how do you address that?
Yeah, look, this is another great place where we've used AI, which is what we call smart coaching. Because historically, you had people who came to a company, they started at a certain level, they worked their way through. We had pretty high tenure employees. Now, as the war for talent goes up, we have a fair number of short tenure employees. So how quickly can we train people up in the complexity of network and technology? So we have something called smart coaching, which is who's the customer you're talking to, what technology you're talking about, and we have auto prompts that show up on the screen that tell the agent exactly what to do and how to deal with it. Over a period of time, they get used to it, they learn, they don't need those prompts. So earlier, coaching used to be something you did before your job started. You did 3 weeks, 4 weeks of coaching, and then you got onto the job. Now we get people on the floor. We do some training upfront, but live smart coaching, leveraging AI, leveraging prompts that happen in the middle of a call. So that's how we keep our force, refreshed and ready to attack all the new technologies that we throw at them.
Got it. And does that fold in with some of the certification programs that people are getting on their own to fortify their own skills?
Yeah, we do. Look, we support, we support a bunch of internal certifications as well as some external certificates based on the technologies we use. So, for example, if it's Cisco or Palo Alto, we'll support the local underlying certification on that. So definitely, look, there's formal education, there is on-the-job training, and there is certification. All three, you have to work them together. Because, look, we love our long tenure V-teamers, people who win with us for multiple decades. But in this war for talent, we have to be ready to adapt our processes to folks who come on in the last year. I mean, we've hired thousands of people, during COVID, and how do you get them ready for the job?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad we're talking about the war for talent and the labor shortage that goes along with that. Specifically, how does Verizon's main business, wireless connectivity, play into our ability to work remotely? This is something that I'm sure you and your team have thought a lot about. Can you talk to us about what kind of AI tools businesses have access to so that their employees can work remotely? How has that suite expanded over the past year and a half?
Look, the first one we are most excited about is our wireless fixed, what we call business internet or fixed wireless access. Historically, Verizon used to provide broadband in the northeast part of America. Starting with Boston all the way down to Virginia, we had the best. It's called Fios. It's the best internet service on earth, and we were very happy with it. But earlier this year, we decided to launch nationwide broadband. Almost 25 million homes, 2 million businesses now have access to Verizon wireless internet. So it's very simple. It's a small box, looks really cute, 6 inches. You go, you plug it, and you get access to the best wireless network on earth. It's that simple, literally. You plug, you wait for it to boot, and you're up and running. And it's pretty big for us. It's a new market we're going after, and our primary focus is work from home. We work with large companies who want a very stable connectivity for their workforce, and we do large deals with them, but also primary internet connection at home. Folks using it for home office with a little bit of school homework and a lot of Fortnite. We are cool with that as well. So it's a new market for us, and we are really excited about the traction we've had in the last 3-4 months there.
What does the cost for that look like? As demand goes up, and you're seeing that not just along the Northeast or traditional markets, but across the nation, obviously costs are going to increase, at least initially, for the build out, but does it start to come down after, say, 5 years, 10 years, or can that be done sooner?
No, look, we just had a capital day recently, and what we have is we are now at peak capital build for us. We've guided to a very large number, $23 billion. And what we see is in the next 2-3 years, a build will be complete. And then we'll come back to BAU or even less than BAU levels of capital. So we are right now at peak capital investment. We've never invested more, but more importantly, we have never been more confident investing more in our business because our mobility business is taking share. We are doing very well there. And this new market around fixed wireless access, it's an addressable market we never had. So it's a new market. We are building the network, and we can't stop doing that.
So based on what you see from your own customers, your own enterprise customers, what does the effort to get people back into the office to kind of resume what we had seen pre-pandemic look like to you? How far along are we in trying to get back to that pre-pandemic normal?
Yeah, look, I think we are somewhere, I would say, in a baseball game, probably the second or third innings,
Wow.
in that journey there. Look, for us, the focus has been on flexibility. Look, we move all our employees, almost 90% of our employees who could work from home. Look, we still run a network. If someone has to come to your house or your office to do something, she or he is going to have to do it. Same with our stores. So we have a large field force, but some of our office workers like myself, we've been able to work from home. For us, the focus is flexible.
That's the focus at Verizon. What about the focus at Verizon's customers? What do you see? Is it also second inning in a baseball game?
Yeah, look, different markets are in different places. In the South, we see more people come back to the office. In the Northeast, it's a little slower. Some of it may have to do with the season. But what is important for us is when people come back to the office, the network is ready. So I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. When we all left the office two-ish years ago, we were all using voice communication. We all got onto a conference room. We had a little bridge. Now we all come back. We all have a video connectivity. The demand for bandwidth has gone up exponentially back in the office. So what my team is working on is before you bring your team back to the office, get the office ready because you're going to need 10x, 12x, 15x more bandwidth, low latency, better reliable connection. So a lot of work is going on that. Second is people are upgrading their infrastructure back in the office because it's a good time. As occupancy is a little low, it's a good time to go and rip out equipment and put in new equipment and upgrade their network. So those are some of the area trends we are seeing right now.
And how do you use automation and AI to accelerate or to enhance that upgrade effort of the infrastructure?
Look, I'll give you a good example with our own network. What we do is for each of our cell sites, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of cell sites. Each cell site, we create a digital twin in our servers, if you will. And that digital twin gives you exactly the same look and feel parameters as you were in real site. So we can adjust the RF signal, we can arrange the tilt, the antenna, the weather factors. So in real time, we can tweak stuff and roll it out into the field. So what used to take someone, we had to send someone up in a tower, they used to tweak something, come back, test. With the digital twin using AI and automation, we do that in the lab today and deploy it. So huge reduction in time, but more importantly, a much better customer experience because the network works faster, but it also responds to changes. So for example, if the traffic has moved from a part to another part, we can very quickly move traffic around to make up for that.
That sounds great. And certainly for the customer, it makes things much more efficient. But what about for employees? Does that mean that they're out of a job if once upon a time they were going up and doing it physically and now they're doing it in the office and you don't need as many people? What does that look like in terms of your employee count?
Look, what happens is the skill base changes. We need less, but those people get retrained, reskilled to focus on how they can use AI and automation to make the network better. For example, a systems performance team, sometimes they had to climb, they had to get in, but now they do it through laptops, they do it through access through data. So a big skill change, that's where we are focused on. We have to reskill our employees at a pretty aggressive pace to catch up with big data, digital automation. So those are some of the key learning programs we have within Verizon.
Got it. I want to talk also about another example that your team has given us, which is that Verizon has an AR product. It's an app, actually, to help me, the consumer, set up a router at home. I can launch it and get a tutorial on every step in the process. Once upon a time, I would have to call up Verizon and ask for an appointment, and the technician would come over and do it for me probably a few days, maybe a few weeks later. Is this app going to eventually replace all the existing services that Verizon does offer that I pay a premium on, as part of my monthly fee? Or to what extent are you thinking of this as a supplement to existing services and getting ready to roll out other services?
Look, it's a very supplementary. The way I think about it is different customers have different level of familiarity with something. Some folks want people to come to their house or their office, set something up, set up the TV, set up the remote, set up the internet, even set up the Wi-Fi password, give it to them, set up the whole experience. We'll support them. There are some folks, I suspect you're on that list, we're like, send me the box, don't call me. If I have a problem, I'll call you back. So everyone has a different nature, and we want to be able to serve everyone where they want to be served. So that's the important part. This AR product is really cool. Basically, it's an app that tells you what jack to put inside, which plug, and then what to connect where. It's so simple, even I can do it. So it's a big change for us, but what we find is our customer experience scores, our NPS scores, are going up. Even when customers have to do it themselves, because it's such an easy process, they want to do it themselves, there's a certain joy and pride in it. So they end up giving us really good customer experience scores. We are really bullish about this AR app.
You said it was a big change for you. Was it a hard sell internally to the teams?
I think it was, look, we've been doing something the same way for a very long time, where we dispatch a technician, he or she goes to a home, set up an appointment. When COVID happened, we couldn't do it. But at the same time, people needed that service. So this was something we started launching in COVID. Another one is video triage. So for example, you're installing something, you're trouble fixing, you take a video, you show it, it connects back to one of our technicians in one of our centers. She will walk you through what the process is. So literally this came out of COVID. And what we found was it took less time, satisfaction of higher, the employees were more satisfied, the customer was more satisfied. Similar to call centers, they are now focused on solving the more complex needs, the more advanced troubleshooting pieces. So this is a win-win for everyone, and wish we had done it many years ago, but there's no time like now to do this.
Yeah, it's funny what an emergency will do in terms of creating opportunities. Obviously, when we talk about what's going on right now and how we're going to adjust to the new normal, and of course, we're all in the middle of adjusting to the new normal, supply chain issues is really top of mind for every single manager. I'm wondering how you're using automation and AI to help you address some of those challenges, because as far as we can tell, it's not going to be solved in the next couple of months or years. This might be a permanent change.
Yeah, look, we, like everyone else in our industry, we are working through our supply chain issues. Sometimes given our size and scale, we are probably slightly lesser impacted than the others, but we've made some changes. One is lead order times. Things we used to order 3-4 weeks in advance, now we order 50 weeks in advance. So just a lot more work. But two things we do. One is track and trace. One of the most important things in supply chain is to know where something is and know in what condition it is. So IoT, the Internet of Things, it's a great opportunity for us to deploy solutions where you track every single pallet across the world as it comes from Asia all the way to the US and transported by rail. You can track exactly where your pallet is. It's a very powerful tool, especially for now. For us, another piece internally where we're using is advanced forecasting using AI. Typically, when a large build program like ours does, we buy minor materials. things like connectors, power adapters, small tools. These were procured regionally. The local manager went to a local supplier and got it. These are now in short supply. So what we do is now we centralize all of that. And then we use really advanced models to decide who gets what when. Because you don't want to hold up supply in Boston when there's a build happening in Florida. So we know where everywhere our build is, which stage of the build is, what materials are needed when. And through some central warehouses, we're able to dispatch that. This is a skill we never had before. But with the pandemic and the supply chain, we're having to get much better about forecasting our needs, figuring out where our inventory is, and then dispatching it to the right person at the right time. So it's a really new skill, but one that I think is a competitive advantage for players like us.
It's really clear from our conversation how much you have used different automation tools and AI tools to create efficiencies, but also create this better experience for your employees and your customers. How much of this technology are you developing in-house? Are you hiring your own software developers to produce and to create and keep it internal versus spending on third-party software or outsourcing it to someone else?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, there are three things you need to make something like this work. You need data that needs to be clean. And a company our size, we have a lot of data, like literally what we call data exhaust. So that part we are well covered. We have data in different ways. The second is tools. Here's where we use fair amount of third-party tools. But look, if there are some places we need to build something internally, we'll do it. I'll give you an example where we had to build something internally. It's called Artemis, which is our internal tool for the sales teams. They take demand, they take news feeds, they take inventory, and they tell you which customer is a target, who has a high propensity to buy, what are the characteristics of that sale to the customer. We didn't have a ready-made tool outside to do it, so we ended up building on our own. But some of our other tools will use commercial third-party software. Our bias is to not spend time on reinventing tools, because you want to reuse tools there broadly, but more importantly, use our people to adapt them to our situations. One of the biggest things you see in large companies with automation is everyone has data, everyone has tools, everyone does analysis, but very few are able to take that analysis and put it back into the work stream. So for example, if I know, Scarlett, you had a bad network experience, which is very unlikely at Verizon, but let's assume you do. And you could be a landing churn customer, you could churn away. We know in advance what that is, and then very quickly we're able to take our models and work back with you within days to let you know, hey, you had a bad network issue in this market. Let's work with you. It's either a handset issue, a network issue, or a software issue, and work. So proactively taking it, putting it into our workflows, that's the power that large companies really need to do, and one where we focus most of our energies on that.
Right. And again, solving the problem, even if it takes a couple of days, whereas before it might have been kind of unsolvable at the end. I want to end on a little rapid fire section just to wrap up our conversation here. What are you most excited about for the rest of 2022 when it comes to the tools that you can roll out using automation and AI?
Look, for us, 5G is the biggest piece. It's such high bandwidth. Things that could be done with only in the office, now that can be done remotely, and what it means for the kiosks, the construction trailers, things where data is captured, things where automation is done, we are able to bring the network to them. So that's probably our biggest unlock this year.
What do you worry about the most when it comes to automation and what it means for the workforce, perhaps creating redundancies?
For me, the bigger issues on the other side. How can I attract high quality talent and retain high quality talent to work on my problems? For us, that is our biggest issue. We are one of the largest technology companies on earth, and our mission is powered by our ability to attract really good technical talent, network talent, as well as digital talent. So for me, that's a big one for me.
Looking ahead to always bolstering your ranks. Thank you so much. Sampath is Chief Revenue Officer for Verizon Business.
Thank you.
Good morning, and welcome to the panel discussion on leveraging AI to enhance the customer experience. My name is Mandeep Singh, and I'm the Senior TMT Analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence, and with me today is Bridget Carlin, Senior VP IT Operations, Kaiser Permanente, Simon Latour, Chief Digital Officer and Head of Innovation, SG Americas, Xing-Chu Liu, SVP Enterprise Data Analytics and Tech, Macy's, and Sami Asefa, Head of AI and Machine Learning Innovation at US Bank. Welcome, gentlemen and women, and it's great to have you all at the panel. And look, we're going to start off, with just talking about how you are leveraging AI for a use case within your companies that has been rolled out at a global scale where you can see a meaningful impact both in terms of customer experience, and then we are going to get into what you plan to do going forward. So maybe, Simon, we can start off with you in terms of a particular use case that you have rolled out within your company and how it's helped improve the customer experience.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So at Société Générale, we have a use case on the trading floor, on the trading side. As you may know, a client sends us requests through Bloomberg chats, for instance. Many of these chats need a product price. So it's a request for quote. And historically, this has been done manually. You have to understand the message and say, okay, the client wants a call option on S&P, strike, 1%, 100%, etc. So we've done some NLP, natural language processing, on these chats to extract the client request. So that's kind of the first step. Then we auto price that request and answer back to the client. There could be a negotiation. And if you think about it, our AI is kind of a trader assistant. It's a job that would historically be done by more like a junior trader. This is now fairly automated. And the trader comes to validate the trade when there's an agreement between the bot, if you want, and the client. So that's in production on several desks. It's a big efficiency gain, and it generates a good amount of flow for us.
Great, thank you. Bridget, let me come next to you. I mean, we've seen how much AI has played a role in terms of the vaccine development and just what it has done around the COVID time. So maybe you can talk about, a particular use case, whether it's related to vaccines or just healthcare in general, that you have seen where AI has played a big role.
Yeah, no, thank you. Appreciate the question, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to everyone today. As you said, AI is helping us with the overall customer experience, and for us, it means patients and clinicians. And our best example is with COVID, with the pandemic. AI was widely used in helping companies like Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, to help develop the vaccines, and with unprecedented speed to help us develop, test, and deploy the vaccines. And now, based on that, AI is now a core competency for drug development, for de-risking and accelerating clinical trials. It's helping us provide precise diagnosis, as well as identifying epidemic trends. So the pandemic actually showed us how AI has been able to do things in, frankly, record time that we haven't done before. And what's interesting here is, we look at AI not only for the great value it had in helping us with vaccines for the pandemic, but for overall healthcare, it's helping us rethink patient engagement. And we look at patient engagement as sort of the last mile problem of healthcare. It's sort of the final barrier between, an ineffective outcome or a good health outcome. So that for the healthcare industry, patient engagement is the focus, and AI is helping us leverage that.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to the patient engagement part, but maybe before that, Xing-Chu, I want to pivot to you. I mean, look, retail sales probably took, a complete turn during COVID times with online shift and all that. And so I'm curious in terms of how you guys have leveraged AI to really change that customer experience.
Absolutely, Mandeep. One of the key applications is really about the customers and really focus on the customer value. Well, for Macy's, one of our key strategies is to empower our customers to own your style. So our job is to really help our customers and connecting the shoppers with the advice, inspiration, the great value, and the great products. This is where the AI plays such a pivotal role to connecting the data together, having a deep understanding of who customers are, and also connecting with the customers at the individual level. It also touches from end to end, meaning starting from engaging with the customers through the marketing, and then going through the online shopping experience, the delivery, the services, the full package as well. So we see tremendous impact, but also this is just the starting of the journey. There's so much work we need to do to really help our customers and drive business value.
Got it. Thank you. And finally, Sammy, maybe you can talk about, just how AI has changed that banking experience, whether it's on the consumer side or anything else that you guys are doing internally.
Thank you. So for us, as a bank, we have a great strategy and very much focused on delivering exceptional customer experience, and AI machine learning has been really driving that. To give you some examples, our mobile app, which is really ranked top in industry benchmarking groups, uses AI and machine learning to drive insights, personalization, information that helps customers to really gain valuable next steps. And another application is around contacts, high-touch contacts, providing customers the opportunity to book meetings and also co-browsing opportunities with bankers. The other extreme of helping customers provide goals, set goals, and also provide the opportunity to guide them to achieve their goals. So these are some of the examples. We're using AI and machine learning to personalize, to deliver value, and really make sure the experiences are frictionless.
Got it. And so, Bridget, I want to come back to you. You mentioned about, driving engagement for patients. I mean, my understanding is whenever you are dealing with patient information, it's very sensitive, and, privacy is at the forefront of it. So how have you thought about implementing AI in a responsible way? Because a lot of these algorithms do require a lot of training. And, you have to capture data. Yes, you can aggregate it, but curious to know your thoughts around just pursuing AI in a responsible way.
Yeah, that's a very important question. And at Kaiser Permanente, let me start by, we believe in sort of three basic foundational tenets for AI. First is we look at AI as augmenting the practitioners and enhancing decision-making. It doesn't replace the person. Secondly, the data and the insights generated by AI belong to their creator. So a patient owns their own data and the insights that are generated. And then third, AI models and algorithms need to be transparent and explainable. We need to actively and intentionally look for and remove bias. So as all of us that have used AI, we know that, particularly in healthcare, it's only as good as the patient data that's collected. So we have to be, the information has to be accurate, and we have to have precision management of the patient data. And as I said, that is, the patient's data is private. When we now stepping back, when we look at, as you said, these models need to be trained, and so you need very large and rich data sources that are, in the case of, depending on the use case, if you will, if it's drug discovery, if it's triaging symptoms, we basically look at anonymizing the data and making sure that there's no privacy issue, that we've been completely compliant with the individual patient data privacy. So I think, for all of us that look at, getting accurate outcomes, having multiple data sources that are anonymized, and that when we look at our models, we are going back to verify that the outcomes that we were looking for are in fact, coming through, that some odd algorithm didn't happen. So just because you have the data set and the knowledge base that's trained, that doesn't mean you just leave it there. You've got to go back and check it and verify. And as I said, very intentionally remove bias and inaccuracy. So we look at AI models as really, it's an ongoing activity. This isn't something that's one and done. We're constantly feeding the models and refreshing data sources and intentionally looking for any kind of bias or inaccuracy.
And just to piggyback on that comment, do you have to work with the regulators in terms of making sure they know what you are doing in terms of these algorithms, or is it more like self-imposed in terms of, you mentioned about removing biases and all that?
It's really all of the above, right? We have, at Kaiser Permanente, we have a very rigorous and ongoing and active basically audit, right, that we go through and ensure that we're compliant and that we're up to date with the most recent and latest changes as policy and compliance rules and regulations, so that we are making sure that we are in compliance and following all the guidance. So that's something that we do very rigorously all the time internally. But then as well, right, you as a regulated industry, it's something that there's independent and outside regulators that come in and verify. So it's a combination, right? And when it comes down to, for example, in my teams, these are the kinds of things that we have disciplines in place. Again, that we follow ourselves, but we don't just stop there. We have independent internal audit. As well as regulators.
Got it. I don't know, Sammy, if you want to add anything there in terms of the compliance aspect of it and what all you need to do to really roll out AI type of products and functionality into your day-to-day products.
Sure, definitely. Like Bridget said, it's really important for us. At the end of the day, we're a bank. People trust us. They come to us with their valuables. So we have extreme focus on privacy, security, and all aspects of responsible AI practices. So we're building the frameworks, and we're establishing them, enacting the mechanisms by which we can deploy AI at scale. And I used to be in the healthcare sector before I moved to finance, so I know some of the parallels, and it's really it's no different in financial services, I would say. And we work with regulators, internal auditors, internal different lines of defense. We call them different risk functions, to make sure whatever we're building is responsible, is ethical, is fair, is not biased. So the two levels, I think, one is the principles level, like everyone has to agree to some core set of principles. But that's probably the easiest part. How do you get to implementing them? Make sure those principles are making sense, and you have a way of adhering to them. I think that's really the critical part, and we have mechanisms to achieve that.
Okay, well, let me pivot to infrastructure, because we keep talking about, AI, algorithms and how much data they need. So maybe, Simon, that's a good point for you to just kind of express what all things you have to do in terms of enabling this AI from an infrastructure perspective, given some of these require a lot of, big upfront investment, sometimes big CapEx dollars as well. So curious, just know your thoughts in terms of the infrastructure side of driving this.
Yeah, sure. AI requires two things, data and compute capacity. We historically had our data lake on-premise, and we decided 2 years ago, I think now, to migrate it to public cloud. So we've now completed that project, and we migrated our data lake storage, from on-premise to a cloud-managed data storage on Microsoft Azure. So this is a pretty large project. This means our entire wholesale banking data lake is now on public cloud, and that's important because that enables us to achieve decoupling between storage and compute. It's something that's fairly difficult to do on-premise. It means that we can have kind of an unlimited amount of compute available on any kind of set of data sets. So that really helps storing, because data science is not that much about the model. It's really having the data well structured, well stored, and available to the data scientist. And public cloud really helps making the data available. So in practice, we use Azure Data Lake Storage for the storage. We use the Hadoop stack from HD Insight to run our algos. We also use Azure ML Workspace to track our experiments, be able to reproduce, and as others were talking, having a proper model risk management is greatly helped by this cloud stack. And we recently started to use Snowflake, in particular Snowflake Data Marketplace, to get vendor data feeds into our series of data sets. So compared to 2-3 years ago, there's been a great change by taking that journey to public cloud.
Yeah, and I'm curious, being a bank, how can, or just in terms of the pace of deployment on public cloud, how did this come about so quickly? Like, what facilitated this quick move to public cloud?
I wouldn't say it was quick. We started 5 years ago, our compute moved to cloud. So for instance, our risk engine, so I think 2015, or 7 years ago now, we started the migration. So I wish I could say it was quick. It was not quick. It's been a 5-7 years of long process. And we're still ongoing. Like, we are migrating dozens of apps, but it's going to take 5 or 10 more years, I think, to complete that migration. So we had to inform our regulators in various regions, Asia, Europe, US, about what we were doing. So it's a challenging and long process.
Got it. Xingqiu, I want to come back because retail is such a big use case for AI. And, when we talk about engagement and how customers like to make their purchases, whether it's e-commerce or in-store, there is that element about user behavior that you can learn through AI. So curious, from your perspective, how do you strike that balance between one, leveraging AI to drive engagement, but also not kind of going beyond the privacy rules and, just the things that we were discussing earlier with Bridget and Sammy?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, we are very much customer-centric organization focusing on driving the value, but at the same time, very much respect the data privacy. So the way I think about the data privacy, there's 3 aspects of that. One is about the culture. The second is about the organization, team enforcing it. The third is about the implementation process. So at Macy's, we have the Chief Information and Security Officer as a leading role to govern the data privacy. We also have data governance team to enforce and through the protocols and implementation. That's how we find that balance. But at the same time, happier customers equals to greater business opportunities. That's how we are treating the whole opportunities and challenges.
Got it. So, when people talk about metaverse or, some of the newer things, how do you guys go about either doing due diligence around what is practical versus what is too futuristic? Just any thoughts around how are you thinking about constantly enhancing that user experience, which you just alluded to?
I'll just couple quick thoughts. First of all, the metaverse is a virtual environment really built upon data. And given the nature of AI is such a deeply rooted in the data, it's really providing a phenomenal virtual world for the AI. So I would think about AI as a Superman version in the metaverse, right? And a lot of constraints will be removed. At the same time, for the business and the customer experience, we need to really imagine all of those all together. So at the same time, to your point about the privacy and really be responsible AI, the way I think about it is it's great to have, like the Neo in a matrix helping others and fighting the evils. But at the same time, we want to avoid the self-duplicating Agent Smith to destroy it as well.
Got it. So will we have a Macy's in a virtual mall anytime soon?
This is something we definitely need to look into it very closely, because there's so much potential we can tap into. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, we really need to reimagine all the existing constraints and really realize the full potential of that.
Got it. So Bridget, talking about customer service, everyone knows, healthcare use cases are enormous when it comes to both on the drug discovery side as well as the patient experience. And so curious to hear from you in terms of the things that you see will be practical in the future because of the advances that we have made in AI.
Well, so I just want to echo in terms of the Macy's model, right? When we think about a more immersive experience for a patient, this is where, we get very excited. I mean, today's healthcare systems have generally been about adherence to a plan or compliance, which is very transactional. The challenge is, how do we move that into a better engagement, better experience? Like, for example, if I have asthma and I know I need to see a doctor every 6 months, okay, but what does my environment look like? What foods should I avoid? How can I live better, knowing more about my condition? And that's what AI is migrating us to. When we're more aware of our health, we can turn that into essentially a better experience. So when we look at what's possible, with this greater focus on personalized care, and frankly, other industries have offered and recommendations on if you like this kind of shirt, well, you might want like these pants, right? These other industries like retail have taught us a lot, and it's raised the expectations in healthcare. And so when we think about the future of healthcare with AI, today we have our smartwatches, our mobile phones that help us track steps, check our heart rate, prompt us to stand up if we're sitting too long. And in the future, we see that households will have more than 50 connected devices on average that'll help monitor health status, and they essentially will put more control with the consumer than we've ever had before. And with the implications of that is that not only yourself as an individual, but your family, your circle of care, for a patient will now be completely digitally enabled with insights, and will essentially help to optimize treatment plans as well as support. And then from the physician standpoint, where anybody that goes in for a checkup or something, the physician is taking notes, manually, even if it's on a computer, or you will be asked to fill out a repetitive survey about updating your health condition. And in the future, AI will enable a much more personalized experience. We'll know that you have asthma, and we'll know, the conditions that you're in and how that maybe has affected you, and can essentially help with much more personalized recommendations on diet and exercise and that kind of thing. And as we extrapolate even more so, not so much like the Matrix, right? But we'll be able to create, each of us will have a digital health twin, right, that we will build together with the data that pertains to us. We have direct access to our medical records. We'll have, implications of what things might mean if we do this or we do that we record, or that gets recorded for us. And ultimately, we envision AI will help the patient have much more control, much more transparency, and be continually able to, update their health plan and help them achieve their wellness goals.
So how far out is the digital twin?
The digital twin, well, it's as we talk about, right? It never happens as fast as you want, but it's all pieces are coming together, right? As you know, right, within the emerging sort of next era of capability, it starts a bit fragmented. So we're getting data from these different devices that we now commonly use today. Where the electronic health records are getting more and more automated, and all of that data, when we leverage AI, right, is being analyzed and understood for better insights. So it's coming, and that really is the exciting part about the healthcare industry, is that there's a lot of opportunity here to make this to accelerate the better engagement and better experience.
Got it. Sammy, I want to touch on a very important topic with you around talent. So when you think about, just bringing people on board who can design these latest AI applications for the kind of things you want to do on the customer service side or AI agents, like, where do you find this talent, or are you facing a talent shortage right now?
Great question. So I think talent, specifically in the field of AI machine learning, is scarce. Traditionally in financial services, the competition, the talent pool was, who the competitors are. But now in AI machine learning, everyone needs that talent. So I think there's a great deal of shortage. So we have we're building strong partnership with universities in their PhD, postdoc programs from the master's level up to attract and retain talent. But also, making sure once we have them, we give them the right tools and technologies to do their jobs right. I think that's one of the key things to keep in mind, is once you have highly qualified, highly skilled AI researchers on board, we have to make sure they spend most of their time doing the actual research, so making sure we remove friction. And that, in a way, is really at the heart of our, using AI to empower our employee, enhance our employee experiences. The whole agenda around goes around that. How do we make sure we use AI to enable our employees to help more customers? So the other angle is exactly helping existing employees. But also attracting, retaining is a key part of our AI strategy.
Got it. Xing Chu, when I look at Macy's, obviously, global business, and it's got so many different parts that can benefit from AI. So what, according to you, whether it's a supply chain or just a customer experience or anything else, will have the most benefit from the advances that we have made in AI over the next 5 to 10 years?
So talking about that, the view I have is really thinking about the whole customer journey. That's how we think about starting from the early engagement of, through marketing and early reach out, all the way to the end supply chain and services. But in between, there is the omni-channel shopping experience that will empower our customers. At the end, we need to offer our customer the inspiration, the great value, and great products. That's where the AI is playing such a pivotal role across all the stages. For us, as we're thinking about the next 5 years, the trend is really about at the connection with individual customer at the one-on-one level. This is where the AI plays such a critical piece, because it's the strength of the depth, the scale, and the speed. That's why it's really empower all the intelligence and make it a possibility.
Got it. Simon, I have the same question for you. What is that one trend that you are working towards at Societe Generale, and how long do you think it's going to take there in terms of just the ROI and the impact you see it can have?
Yeah, I see two that are related, and we talked about data privacy. We have the same approach where currently we manually review every project, and as the number of model grows, this is becoming something we need to further automate. So we are investing on differential privacy technology. So differential privacy is kind of adding random noise when your sample size becomes too small, so that you cannot technically get to know what Simon income is, because it's randomized when it gets too small. So all this investment about the tooling to facilitate respecting privacy is really critical to make us more efficient. So there's a strong focus on that to make the teams more efficient. And related to that, it's the fact that every player in the industry store its own data sets, and this is overall very inefficient. We talk about metaverse. Metaverse is based on blockchain. To me, blockchain or DLTs are really revolutionary to avoid stopping having data replication everywhere. So we're also investing in working on DLT ledger that will be shared amongst market participants. And to me, this is a revolutionary for the operational efficiency of our industry, financial industry, but also in the way the industry will be kind of reshaped. So privacy and blockchain storage of data are the two key points that we're working on.
Got it. And since we have 3 minutes left, Bridget, I'll ask you the final question, and others can chime in as well. Any final takeaways in terms of your view of AI and what to look out for over the next few years in your space?
Well, I think, like many industries, AI is reinventing healthcare as we know it today. And at Kaiser Permanente, we're leveraging AI and other advanced technology together to help our members navigate the right care anywhere that they may be, anytime that they want it, and have it personalized with treatments, convenient access, easier payment and claim processes, for an overall much more seamless and satisfying patient engagement. So we're very excited about the opportunity, and we're working every day to help our patients receive better care, better access, an overall better experience.
Got it. Xingqiu?
I would say to our business audience specifically, thinking about AI has the exponential impact on the business, both the top line and bottom line. Also, it's relatively low cost to scale it up. But at the same time, we're thinking about AI is capable of making immediate impact. Also, it is a journey. So it does require the vision, the long-term strategy, and a robust plan to execute upon. And last but not least, building the AI solution is only the step one, because the business implementation and the integration is critical to a success as well.
Got it. Sammy?
Definitely. I think AI and machine learning are powerful technologies. And for us, I think my last thought is we have to make sure the customers are first, build things in a customer-centric way. And with powerful technologies, there is a risk as well. So make sure we're aware of the risks and manage them effectively in a responsible way.
Got it. And finally, Simon.
I would say that, as I said, AI is a journey, and the model is only a small piece. I was surprised to see how important was the data engineering piece. I think we should not forget that the key part is the software engineering, the data engineering, the data storage, and this is what, in my opinion, makes a difference between a project that stays at a pilot phase or a project that becomes a production and used in practice. It's really the data engineering and the software engineering. The model somehow is not the most difficult.
Got it. I want to thank you all for a wonderful panel discussion. This has been great. I really enjoyed listening to all of your views. And look, I mean, there is a lot that will change. Predictions never come kind of fully, they pan out the way you expect them to. But at the same time, I think this leaves our audience with a good kind of framework in terms of what to expect and things that they can research on their own. So with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you all, and everyone have a great day.
Welcome, everybody, to what I think is one of the most fascinating subjects of our day, how we get our packages, how we get them quickly, how we get them without accident, and how, frankly, how much technology goes into that is just amazing. With us, we have somebody who is the best person to speak about this. His name is Satyan Parameswaran, and he is president of UPS Information Technology. You join after a lauded career in engineering. You were working in the biomedical sphere. You were working in the financial sphere. Now, packages. Why?
Lisa, good to be here. I'm an engineer at heart and by education. If you are an engineer, that means you are a problem solver. Problem solvers are good at taking a complex problem and breaking it down to simple parts so that you can solve it meaningfully and, more importantly, repeatedly. If you are that person, UPS is the place, because UPS is an engineering company which happens to have a lot of packages and trucks to deliver packages around the world. So the logistics business is nothing but applying and making sure the right resources are available at the right time to pick up a package, move the package, and deliver the package. So on every single day, we solve the engineering problem of how to move 25 million packages across 220 countries efficiently and profitably and making customers smile. So it's a great place to be if you are an engineer.
I think that probably some people may not think of UPS as an engineering company with incidental trucks and planes and packages being delivered. And yet the way that you describe it is so fundamental to what you do every day and, frankly, what we all rely upon. What are the problems that you're solving at a time when we all want our packages and we want them now?
So on a normal day, I said we deliver 25 million packages. These 25 million packages typically get picked from 8 to 10 million locations across so many countries. We have, give or take, around 2,000 facilities around the world where we receive packages, we process the packages, and we sort them, and then we put them in the package cars that can go out and deliver packages. If you look at it, every one of those locations, we need to have the ability to plan how many packages are going to come in, how many packages are going to leave, how many people are needed, how many people are needed to sort the packages at 4 o'clock in the morning, how many drivers are needed, how many package cars are needed, and what time each of those packages need to be delivered, because we are known for only one thing, delivering packages on time. So all these activities happening across 2,000 places, across 25 million packages on every single day needs a lot of processing. That amount of processing is practically not possible to be done just by humans. So we use an extensive amount of state-of-the-art technology to help our planners and sorters and drivers do a better job so that we can deliver packages.
So you rose to this position in 2019.
Yeah.
And this issue has been going on for a while. Amazon, many of the other companies, the just-in-time delivery has been very present. So how has the game shifted where artificial technology, artificial intelligence is so crucial? How is it done before? And how is it changing apart from just sort of replacing certain human deliberation?
So let me take a step back. I said we have around 2,000 facilities. Let me take one facility. Say, Lisa, you are the planner for the facility. So you have been doing that job for, say, 10 years, 20 years. So you know on a normal day, hey, I am supposed to get 8,000 to 8,500 packages. I am supposed to put maybe like 45 drivers on the road. And you have this tribal knowledge and experience built into you. So you are making decisions based on your experience. Come pandemic, all the patterns you realized are no longer valid because the whole delivery pattern changed. We were no longer delivering to commercial locations because most of the organizations allowed their people to work from home. So our delivery pattern changed and we started carrying more packages. So Lisa, if you are a planner, how can I help Lisa to make better decisions? Say, instead of 8,000 packages, all of a sudden you are going to process only 6,000. You don't want to have more people, because if you have more people, you would tend to use them, so the efficiency goes down. Or on a day, say, instead of 8,000 packages, you are supposed to handle 10,000 packages. You just cannot make up people. So the cost of poor quality planning was so important, because, like I said, we are logistics. We need to know what resources should be available at what time so that we can deliver services. Like Lisa in that center, I have 2,000 Lisas. How do we use technology so that I have a bird's eye view of the network? All the 2,000 places, 8 to 10 million customers giving their packages to UPS, and we trying to deliver 25 million packages, some of them in the network. The bird's eye view, we take it and we let Lisa know, Lisa, this is what you need to do.
So when you say we, talk a little bit about the actual programming, what the inputs are, what goes into it in order to give me what I need to know to figure out how many drivers to book and when to sort the packages. So
the we I mentioned is, we built a platform, a proprietary data engineering platform at UPS. We love our acronyms. We call it HEAT. HEAT stands for Harmonized Enterprise Analytics Tool. It takes all the data. When I say all the data, say you log on to ups.com, you want to ship a package. That's the digital emission. Hey, Lisa wants to ship a package. Like that, everybody wants to ship a package, we get the data. When I say I am trying to deliver 25 million packages, that's data. And the 25 million packages didn't happen to come to the delivery point all of a sudden. They went through the network. So on any given day, I may carry 50 to 60 million packages in the network. Then another 25 million packages might be on their way. And we have industrial automation. We have trucks, we have planes, sorters. Every one of them are giving a digital signal at every single second. So we built this platform, taking customer intention to ship, our intention to deliver, our sortation automation, 27,000 transactions per second throughout the day we process. It's more than billion transactions per day we process to make it happen.
A lot of people think about artificial intelligence as replacing human intelligence. And I know that you push back against that, where you say it's actually doing things that human beings cannot do, like process a billion different things every day. How will this evolve in terms of the interplay as to the human component and the technological backup for how this will actually function?
That's a great question. This platform is a centralized platform, but it is not a centralized decision-making platform. We still need 2,000 Lisas to plan, because they are all over the world. They may have connectivity, they may not have connectivity. So this platform is an intelligent way to help Lisa to make better decisions with a higher quality of data. The moment Lisa knows what is coming in, they can make better decisions. Eventually, will Lisa be replaced? We don't think so at this point, because the act of logistics is influenced by so many factors. A local weather, a water pipe breaking down, or a small dam breaking out, a power outage. So we will always have a need for the planner at the end point. But helping the planner with the better data quality and better decision-making tools is the way to go.
Okay, you say that it's not going to replace me if I'm the head of this, this processing center. So what is the evolution?
The evolution is artificial intelligence augmented decision-making, because the cost of poor quality decision for a logistics company is huge. Say, if you are looking for 10 people, if you end up using only 6, or if you are looking for 15, either way it's bad. Either we are going to spend too much money to deliver packages, or we are going to deliver packages late. So we are trying to make better quality decisions. So this platform's intent is how to help the planners to plan much better.
Is the goal ultimately to save money, to be more profitable, or to just be able to do more and faster, or all of the above? I mean, how much is this what a lot of people would look at as a cost-saving measure?
Absolutely. We are a for-profit corporation. That's no secret. Every massive project like this has to justify itself. So this heat platform, if I just throw some numbers at a very high level, we could have saved 100 million miles that need not be driven. There is a saying here at UPS, the greenest mile at UPS is the mile that's not driven. So if you say I saved 100 million miles, to drive 100 million miles, I would have spent fuel, I would have spent human effort, I would have spent wear and tear on the vehicle, I would have spent capital to buy the package car. All those things are savings. So it's hundreds of millions of dollars in savings and hundreds of millions of dollars in emissions that are avoided. If you translate those many hundreds of millions of miles that are not driven, you can translate it to several metric tons of emissions that are avoided.
When you talk about artificial intelligence, I want to dig into the intelligence part, especially as we're looking at a world globally that is facing some unprecedented challenges, whether it's COVID, whether it's the war in Ukraine, that has left a lot of the supply chains disrupted. How do you plan around these exogenous events? And whether, you know, there's a shipping plant where people they're all getting COVID and then they're staying home, or if there's a war and people can't get to certain ports.
So once again, I think you have the habit of asking great questions about logistics. Are you sure you never worked in logistics?
I am absolutely positive. And I can tell you, anyone who knows me knows that I'm absolutely dreadful. Full respect for logistics, but, you know, leave it to you.
Artificial intelligence and planning a network, they all need one thing in common. You need high quality data. So with respect to geopolitical situations affecting a particular part of the world, or some weather incidents and knocking out a couple of states, say 27 inches of snow somewhere. When those things happen, the platform we have built, it knows the available capacity and available operatable capacity to us. I'll give an example. There was a weather incident in Texas a few months back. Our network was kind of stalled for more than 24 hours. That means I cannot route those packages through Texas. We didn't stop delivering packages. Our platform knows, hey, these are all the places that are not available. So it intelligently routes the packages through other parts of the network so that the customer, you, Lisa, when you shipped a package, say, from Houston to San Francisco, I'm not going to come and tell you just because there was significant amount of snow in New Mexico, your package is not getting delivered. We have the ability to recognize the bottlenecks and route the packages around the bottleneck so that the customer's packages are getting delivered. So those kind of macro effects affecting micro centers, if you are, Lisa, working in the plant, you might not have that ability. So that's why we have the platform that keeps looking at the overall network, and we have a digital twin of the network. And the digital twin will tell, hey, these sections of the network are not available, work around it. That's what we have done.
So one thing that you've been talking about is we've come to rely on faster and more accurate delivery on a regular basis, and how some of these engineering and frankly the artificial intelligence that you use isn't simply nice to have or smoothing over the edges, but it's very much a necessity. The only way that this gets done. At what point are we approaching our limits in terms of how quickly we can expect things to be delivered?
So how quickly things get delivered is going to be dependent on how many resources are available to be thrown at what price point. Because all the logistics company, we make efficiencies at a macro scale. If we keep going down the path of I want my package in 3 hours while your neighbor can wait for 2 days, it affects the macro efficiency. So can all these deliver me same day, deliver me in 4 hours are achievable? Definitely. But they will all operate like a network within the network. You can't make the worldwide network good enough to handle the end point, the same day delivery as well as good at it. So our concept is network within the network, plug in the players. That's how it's going to be done.
How does an artificial intelligence platform deal with the humanity of the classic understanding of what UPS delivery is. I mean, I think about, for example, during the holidays, when my kids know that they're going to be getting packages and they get excited about it, or when we see the mailman in the evening and we say hi to him.
So artificial intelligence is definitely not going to impact our service provider driver interactions because they are our face of our company. One of the most friendliest operators are UPS drivers. That's not going to affect them. However, it's going to make them do their job much more efficiently because they also have their families. We will make sure that their day is planned out so that when they leave the center around 8:45 in the morning, they deliver all the packages and then they come back on time so that they can have their quality of life. So artificial intelligence is going to make everybody's quality of life much better and also help us to deliver packages using the least amount of effort and cost so that we can make the shareholders happy.
You've been at UPS for almost 20 years.
Yes.
19 years. A lot of changes in that time.
A lot of changes.
From everything from the technology that you're talking about to what we expect in terms of delivery and how people operate. What do you think will be some of the biggest advancements over the next 10 years in your space that you think perhaps people are not counting on as much?
So I have seen a lot of changes in the last 19 years, but if you look at UPS from a distance, we have been in business for 118 years. We have seen multiple world wars and several geopolitical destabilization efforts and a lot of economic downturn. So we are good at adapting to what's coming. We are also very good at adapting technology. We were the first logistics company in the early 90s to start using 2D barcodes. We were the first ones to say, give me the package level detail customer so that I can plan my network. We started it. These concepts were just on academic papers. We started them. So we always try to push the envelope. Our network, we built it based on scanning. Say you put a package, when it goes through our network, a human or an overhead camera scans the package. So the scanning is the part of our network that helps us to know what is going on. We are starting a new journey to transform our company from scanning to sensing. What will happen if the package has a smart tag? It will declare, hey, this is me. I am coming from here. I am going here. Help me to go there. So we want to transform our company from scanning operations to sensing operations. So with the advent of RFIDs, with the advent of smart tags, we are going through the transformation of making the network a sensing network. You might have seen some glimpses of the sensing network in the last 2 years, our COVID vaccines. When we shipped them, we attached all those packages with a smart powered RFID tag, which was kind of declaring every single second, hey, this is where I am. Please don't lose me. Yeah. This is where I want to go. Am I in the right place? So we have the transformation of from scanning to sensing. Once you are in the sensing world, the industrial automation that can help to move these packages at a much more efficient scale is tremendous.
So I'm going to ask and finish up with an unfair question. So I apologize in advance. You're getting nervous. I can feel it. Which is you collect so much information through this whole process. Mm-hmm. There is such a bird's eye view on an entire world and frankly, the flows of objects. Are there any plans or could it be used for something that we haven't really discussed? As you say that it's an engineering company with incidental planes and trucks and packages.
So with lots of amounts of data, we collect data about a particular location, what all the packages they have shipped, what all the packages they have received. We also have a product called My Choice. You as an individual customer can register for My Choice. So UPS will let you know when UPS is sending packages to you from anyone. We will let you know, and we have My Choice for this. So we collect a lot of data that can be used. Where this is going to go is we will be able to create very customizable products that can suit Lisa or Bridget or Satyan or for particular segments. That's where it's going to go. With a lot of data with us, we have the responsibility to keep the data safe and not misuse it. So we play by all the compliance rules, but the data will result in creating very innovative, customer-centric products of the future. That's where it's going to go.
Satyan, thank you so much for taking the time. This was fabulous.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you all for joining us for a briefing on intelligent automation, creating the workforce of the future. We hope you enjoyed these conversations. And thanks again to all of our speakers for a wonderful program. And thank you to our sponsor, IBM, for making this virtual briefing possible. If you'd like more information about IBM, please visit the Resources tab on your screen. And most of all, thank you for being such an engaged audience. To watch any part of this event, you can return to BloombergLive.com to view on demand. Thank you for watching. And we'll be in Boston on April 13th for an in-person briefing on intelligent automation creating the workforce of the future.